Hi, third graders, it's Mrs. Moore. Today I get to teach you our second capacity and weight lesson. Today our focus will be on metric units. So by the end of the lesson today, you will be able to determine the most appropriate metric unit to use to measure liquid. So our two options today for the metric system are liters and milliliters. Boys and girls, as always, if you don't already have the materials to participate in this lesson, please pause the video and get some scratch paper and a pencil and your district math packet if you have one so that you can participate with me. So let's start by reviewing what we learned about capacity yesterday. Well, we know that capacity is the amount of liquid a container can hold. We know that there are two systems that we use to measure liquid volume: the customary system and the metric system. Yesterday, as you know, we learned all about the customary units of measurement. Who remembers what they are? Please write these down on your scratch paper. Was anyone able to remember all four customary units of measure? We know that we measure small amounts of liquid in cups. We know that our school milk at school comes in a cup of milk. We know that medium amounts of liquids are measured in pints and quarts. And when using the customary system of measurement, large amounts of liquids are always measured in gallons. It's the largest customary unit of measurement. Sit up really straight and focus, because today we get to learn something new. We get to learn about the metric units of measurement for capacity. In the metric system, there are only two units of measurement for liquid volume or capacity, so it's a little simpler to understand. These two units of measurement are milliliters and liters. There are only two. So we measure very, very small amounts of liquid in milliliters. I always think of a dropper, like an eyedropper, that's only about halfway full of liquid, because a milliliter is only about 20 drops of water, so it's a very small amount. So that's actually less than the amount needed to fill a teaspoon. So a milliliter is a very, very small amount. Soda and other drinks are often sold in liter bottles. So a liter can be divided into 1,000 milliliters. There are 1,000 milliliters in 1 liter. So pause the video, go into your fridge, and take a close look at some labels and see how many liters or milliliters of liquid they contain. Please pause the video and also write on your scratch paper that 1,000 milliliters is equal to 1 liter. So very, very small amounts of liquid are measured in milliliters, and larger amounts are measured in liters. So just like we talked about yesterday, we know that there are ways to measure liters and milliliters. So we know that 1,000 milliliters is equal to a liter. So the scale on this picture uses a vertical number line, which you've become very familiar with from bar graphs, from elapsed time on a number line, from rounding. You know a lot about this, so you'll be very successful. So let's study this picture. We know that if we filled it to the very top line right here, it would be 1 liter of liquid. And it also says 1,000 milliliters, because 1,000 milliliters is equal to 1 liter. So let's look at this number line. Oh my goodness, I can tell that it's increasing by 100 milliliters at a time. So I have a challenge for you. Would you please pause this video and think about, so based on what you know about number lines, and especially vertical number lines, how many milliliters do these midpoint tick marks represent? What are these tick marks right in the middle, and how do you know? Pause the video. You're right, these bold tick marks right in the middle are increasing by 50 milliliters at a time. And I know that because right in between 100 and 200 milliliters is 150, because it's 50 away from 100 and 50 away from 200. So it's increasing by increments of 50 each time. So what would be the amount of water if I filled it right to this line right here in between 700 and 800? How many milliliters of water would that be? Precisely, it would be 750 milliliters because it's halfway between 700 and 800. So just so that you get more familiar with liters, I'm going to show you some common objects or containers that you might have seen in your real life and tell you how many liters of liquid they hold. This is a 1 liter bottle. So if you were to get a bottle of soda to share with your whole family, it would probably be about 2 liters. A 1 liter bottle is something that maybe you would split with just a friend or split 3 ways. So this is a 1 liter bottle. They're often sold at grocery stores or gas stations, something that you can just pick up and drink throughout the day. This is a 10 liter bucket, so it would hold 10 liters of water. A fish tank or aquarium that looks like this would be a 50 liter fish tank. So there would be 50 liters of water inside. And a pool would be at least 75,000 liters of water. So boys and girls, let's look a little bit more closely at each metric unit of capacity. So let's talk about milliliters. So we measure very small amounts of liquid in milliliters. So pause the video and think about what are some really, really small amounts of liquid in real life that you would use milliliters to measure. So these pictures represent about a milliliter, or maybe a little bit more. So this spoon that's not even completely full of milk represents a milliliter, or just a little bit more than a milliliter. This dropper, filled a little less than halfway with water, is about a milliliter. A really, really large raindrop would be about a milliliter. And a medicine measuring cup with just a tiny bit of liquid would be a milliliter. This one actually has over a milliliter of liquid. Can you guys think of some ways we would need to use milliliters in real life to measure very small amounts of liquid? What really small amounts of liquid did you think of? So a teaspoon of fluid is about 5 milliliters. So if you're baking and it says add a teaspoon and you do, you've added 5 milliliters of liquid. So it really is such a small amount. A milliliter is about 4 droplets of water. So if I squirted out 4 droplets of water, it's about a milliliter. You would use milliliters to measure small amounts of liquid, such as the amount of water in a cup, the amount of juice in a juice box, the amount of yogurt in a container, or soup in a small bowl. In the metric system, milliliters are used to measure any liquid less than 1 liter. So I'll think back to that soda pop bottle. If the liquid that I'm thinking about is less than the amount of liquid in that soda pop bottle, I know I'd use milliliters. So I would use milliliters to measure the amount of yogurt in my container, or the amount of cocoa in my cup because it's less than a liter, or the amount of shampoo or conditioner in a travel size shampoo bottle, or the amount of juice in my juice box, because milliliters measure very small amounts of liquid. What else did you guys come up with? Fantastic. Now let's think about liters. So when we use the metric system, we measure medium and large amounts of liquid in liters. So here are liter bottles of soda. You'll notice it's not quite as big as those 2-liter bottles that you would maybe split with your whole family if you're having a pizza night or to enjoy for a whole week. They're not quite that big. They're half that size. So it would be maybe something that you purchase to drink for a couple days or to split with a sibling. It could also be a box of juice could be sold in a liter that you would split with a couple people. This is what a liter of milk looks like. You'll notice it's nowhere near as big as a gallon. This is what a liter of water would look like if you were going camping or going for a hike and you just wanted to enjoy water throughout the day. Sometimes shampoos are sold in liter bottles. And this right here, which is a typical juice that you might have in your fridge, this Simply cranberry juice is actually 1.75 liters. So that means it's almost 2 liters. Let's think about when we would use liters in real life. So a liter is the volume of a small milk carton that you would split with 1 or 2 family members one time. So like this size that maybe you would split with 3 family members if you're enjoying some cookies. Bottles of soda, water, and juice are also measured in liters. So families often split 2-liter bottles of soda. So this is what a 2-liter bottle of soda would look like to enjoy throughout the week. You certainly couldn't drink a 2-liter bottle all by yourself. You'd split it up for a pizza night or for a fun movie night or to enjoy throughout the whole week. In the metric system, all medium and large amounts of liquids are measured in liters. So if it's bigger than a 1-liter bottle, you would use liters to measure it. So like the amount of water in a hot tub, or the amount of juice in a dispenser, or the amount of water in a pool, or this 2-liter bottle. So pause the video and think of any liquid amounts that are greater than a liter. You would use liters to measure that. So pretty much everything you can think of, like a pitcher of juice would be measured in a liter. A large vase would have a liter of water, but a cup would be a milliliter. So the metric system for capacity, the units are much simpler to understand because there are only 2, milliliters and liters. How many milliliters are equal to a liter, third graders? Fantastic. You guys know that 1,000 milliliters equal a liter. You guys get to help me as always, and I'm so excited. So we're going to look at different amounts of liquid. I'm going to get my highlighter. And just like we did yesterday, we're going to determine what's the most appropriate unit in the metric system we would use to measure the capacity of the liquid in a container. But there are only 2, liters and milliliters. I've included this reference here as always so that if you're ever confused, you can ask yourself, well, is the amount of liquid smaller than the amount in a liter pop bottle? If yes, I would use milliliters to measure it. Is it going to be more liquid than the amount in a liter pop bottle? If so, I know I would use liters to measure. Let's read the first one together. A teaspoon of vanilla for my cake. Oh my goodness, well, I actually know that a teaspoon is equal to 5 milliliters, and it's much smaller than a liter. So I know right away that a teaspoon of vanilla is a small amount of liquid, and so I would use milliliters because it's less than the amount of liquid in a liter. Fantastic. Are you ready to do some with me? Can't wait. So what would be the most appropriate unit to use to measure the capacity of a bath full of water? And if you need help, look at your reference. Is that bigger? Is that water more than the amount of water in a liter of soda? Or is it less? Pause the video and write down what you would use to measure the volume of a bath full of water. Rockstar thinking, you're right, you would use liters because the amount of water in there would be a lot more than the amount of pop in a liter bottle. So I know anything that's more than the amount of pop in a liter bottle, I would measure in liters. I only measure really, really small amounts of liquid in milliliters. Okay, you guys are going to do this one. Pause the video and determine, would you measure a dosage cup of children's cough syrup? Would you use milliliters or liters, and why? You guys are absolute rock stars. You would definitely use milliliters. And even on the dosage cup, it's increasing by 5 milliliters at once. It goes 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. So right here is 15 milliliters of cough syrup. So it's not over a liter. So I know I would use milliliters to measure that amount of liquid. All right, sweet peas, you guys do this one too. What would you use to measure a spoonful of honey for my tea? Liters or milliliters? What would be the most appropriate metric unit? If you said milliliters, you're exactly correct. Yes, I know that it's less than a liter bottle of soda, so I know right away it's a small amount of liquid, so I would use milliliters. Give yourselves a pat on the back if you knew that. what about my pudding cup? Which unit would I use to measure the amount of pudding in my cup? Would I use milliliters or liters, and why? Again, if you said milliliters, you're correct, because the amount of pudding in that cup is less than the amount of soda in this liter bottle. So I use my reference. Well, I know it's not quite a liter, and so I know that I would use milliliters. It would be a lot of milliliters, but it would still not be as big as a liter, so I would use milliliters. Okay, sweet peas, let's look at this one. This jug of juice to share with my family. Is it over a liter? Would I use liters to measure the amount of juice, or would I use milliliters? You are exactly right. You would use liters, because if it's a jug of juice that you're going to share with your whole entire family, then you know right away that it contains more than a liter of liquid, so you would use liters. Okay, I'm going to pause this one. Boys and girls, figure out this one. A lake near my home. Pause the video and write a lake, and write on your paper, would you use liters or milliliters to measure the amount of water in a lake? Rockstar job, definitely liters, because the amount of water in this lake is going to be a whole lot more than just 1 liter. So I know right away that I would never use milliliters to measure the amount of water in a lake, because a milliliter is only used to measure very small amounts of liquid. Great listening. Give yourselves a pat on the back. I'm very impressed with you. Here is your assignment today, and you will notice it's just like the work we just did together. So make sure you carefully watch my video and take notes, and then you're going to determine the most appropriate unit to use when measuring the amounts of liquid in different containers. So for this first container, it's a juice pouch filled with juice. I know right away I would use milliliters. And I said a personal juice pouch holds less than a liter of liquid. The volume of juice in a juice pouch would be measured in milliliters. You guys are fantastic listeners. You will get to do the rest of this assignment completely on your own. Please use your vocabulary resource for support and check your work before submitting. I appreciate your fantastic listening and cannot wait to see your work. Bye, boys and girls.